Hello and welcome back to RP-0 America. So here we have a Titan II launch vehicle with not quite a Gemini payload. It's similar to Gemini. I kind of like the look that I've achieved here with the just procedural parts. But in practice I don't have the Gemini service module, which would give it a forward thrusting engine, fuel tanks for that, attitude control, etc. So it's just I just intend to use this craft to get some crewed first. So first to crew to make it to orbit, first to crew to do a little bit of duration mission, because also inside that fairing I've added a little bit of battery and life support supplies, which will allow them to stay in orbit longer than any of my previous crew was able to. I don't remember if I sent Kathy or people up more than once, just because there isn't a ton you can do with just the one crew Mercury type capsule, or at least I'm kind of playing pseudo-historically, and so there isn't much I would do with the one, kind of along the American timeline. There's not much I would do with just one crew member. So this is actually a bit like Vosshood in a weird way, because I don't have a forward thrusting engine, which means I can't meaningfully change my orbit. Although, because of the differences of Vosshood and Gemini, we don't need kind of a separate airlock in order to do our first spacewalk with these astronauts, which is awesome. So we're using a Titan II kind of for the first time in this manner. It doesn't. So the capsule doesn't have a launch escape tower, because it was believed that they had escape seats, just like ejector seats, kind of like airplane pilots would have, where they'd just be, these doors would be fired open really quickly and chairs would be explosively thrown out by little solid charges, rather than having an escape tower. And that was, it was believed that because it was using this type of fuel rather than the kerosene, oxygen, and liquid hydrogen oxygen fuels of other crewed spacecraft, that the burn would be slow enough in an accident of these that the escape seats would be sufficient, or other escape mechanisms where they kind of stay in the capsule, but the capsule kind of jets away from the rest of the craft as it fails, say. This craft also has a fairly short burn time compared to most other craft. Oh, and I probably should set this up to hot stage, so we'll be igniting the second stage engine. That's weird. Usually it kind of shifts. Oh, and it disappeared. Well, that's an interesting glitch. I don't know if I've ever had that happen before. Normally, it kind of looked like it was shifted over, like I was still holding it, and then it just disappeared. All right, so I'll have to manually hot stage this engine. Fair enough. I'll activate engine, activate engine. So I'll kind of have to focus on this a little bit. Activate engine, and then drop it off. Oh, so that worked better than I feared it would. That was weird, though. I've literally never seen an item just disappear from this. Maybe it's a glitch some other people have run into, but I've never seen that. So I'll have to manage this ascent. It's definitely not ideal what I've done there once I noticed that. So notice, say, these times are already pretty close to each other. But anyway, the Titan II has a pretty short burn time for the overall launch vehicle, which also happens to match, and it makes sense that these two things go along with each other. It had high thrust-to-weight ratios for both sets of engines. So which resulted in a short burn time to orbit. So it's one of the few crewed vehicles I ever fly in which I will end up pitching below the horizon on the way to orbit. So that's so right now I'm pitched at 0, and I'll go to negative, because in practice, so I've got this time, and I want this time to match this, but this one keeps decreasing less slowly than this one. For reasons of coordinate system transformations. Even though I'm pitched at 0 degrees, my peak altitude is increasing. So I will end up having to pitch below the horizon. I'm not entirely sure how much. Usually I don't overshoot the initial altitude that much. But I believe I may still have enough delta V to reach orbit. And so those high thrust-to-weight ratios at stage starts also kind of match and couple with high thrust-to-weight ratios at stage burnout. So the Titan II, my understanding, was a relatively difficult vehicle to ride to orbit, the Titan II and Gemini, because of the fairly high thrust-to-weight ratio at stage burnout. Although I believe the engines ran fairly smoothly, which is nice, but still the high thrust-to-weight ratio at the end was a bit hard on the body. Okay, so let's pitch down a bit more because now we've only got a minute left of burn time. So I've upgraded my install to 1.1.3, which I feel like things are running a bit more smoothly. Some things I just copied and pasted over. Scatterer and RV seem to have behaved fine, which is very nice. So I've had a couple of failures with this engine for obvious reasons. I did this upper stage engine that I don't really have any real experience with it. In terms of test flight, so it's relatively likely to fail. Oh, and now I need to manage because this is now dropping fairly rapidly, so I kind of want to balance those two numbers. And also there's kind of a glitch. This engine's a bit weird because it shows as two engines, and that's because the kind of exhaust pumps for this engine were used to steer the vehicle, like to give it roll capability. And there we go. We'll level off pretty soon, and that makes it behave a little weird in terms of realism overhaul and real fuels code. And the engine failed shortly before orbit. Well, that's not nice. Oh well. So we won't be getting any duration records, but there should be a survivable re-entry, which isn't bad. And we will be dipping out into space, which may mean we probably got some firsts. I don't know if these will reflect. Yeah, first mission with 2 crew. It's just super happy about that. I don't know why there were 3 suggestions of that. So we still had a bit of fuel in here, just almost enough to reach orbit. But the only engine we still have that can thrust forward and backwards is the engine we want to use for deorbiting, and we definitely don't want to use that to reach orbit because then we don't have a way to leave orbit. So let us just leave everything in here behind. We'll have time to Apo. Oh, weird. Where are we going to end up coming down? Because that's not a thing we can control now. Interesting. Oh, I see. Time to Apo just looks weird because we're past apoapsis. Fair enough. So the Earth will rotate a little bit, so we might land just a little bit still on some African land there. I suppose only one way to find out is to do it. So let's just dump everything here because there's no benefit we can get from this anymore, because there's the life support and such in here, which we won't be using because we're not in orbit, and this deorbit engine isn't going to do us any real favors. So decouple, let's leave that all behind, and we want to turn, I don't want to be steering that way anymore, so we want to turn the craft around to get the heat shield forward for this not so graceful return. Fair enough. So I believe I have used this upper stage engine, but like I was saying, because it kind of has 2 engines built into it, it didn't cooperate with test flight very well. But Nathan Kell handed me a real fuel DLL that he'd modified yesterday, which is awesome. Thank you, Nathan Kell. And it now seems to be playing nicely with test flight. So it now is showing engine data, but it doesn't have any memory of my previous plays with it. So that's probably why it failed a little prematurely. But yeah, that's okay. We will probably survive this mission if I don't do anything foolish. All right. I mean, that's I suppose what I get for testing this vehicle for the first time with crew, right? It kind of the do as I say, not as I do. You get to see the consequences here of using a crew-rated vehicle with crew the first time you test it. It is not a good idea. As you can see here, we didn't make it to orbit. Thankfully, it's not too expensive of a craft to build, and in practice, for me at the moment, it takes about 60 days to build it. So we can get another one built and get it crewed and complete that space first again. We can complete some new space firsts, and that second stage engine will at least have a bit of experience, so therefore be less likely to fail, which is nice. I'm just accelerating on the way down here. I want to make sure I don't allow it to burn off all my, there we go, these 2 fuels. So I kind of have it, I've told it to hold its orientation here, which could potentially cause it to kind of burn RCS fuels and pitch up and down, back and forth. And it's burning just a little bit. Once in a while you can see that, just the number change, but it's not burning a ton, which is great, which is ideal. So we may come down rough. I don't recall offhand what the parameters, what these numbers are for kind of an ideal Gemini reentry, but it looks okay. I might even just be able to do it without reentry mode, which allows us to generate, reentry mode allows us to generate some lift in a certain orientation. Well, a lift regardless, but sometimes that lift is up and sometimes that lift is down. So in this case, we want the lift to be up so that it makes the reentry a little more gentle. So we spend a little more time higher up in the atmosphere, getting less bite from the air, and lowering the kind of the peak g-forces. All right, so let's see if we can get it to stop swinging. So and the more the air bites, like the higher this g-force gets, the easier it gets to steer this. In practice, usually I kind of turn it on and then kind of guess this position before the atmosphere really bites, so we're kind of near the equilibrium that we'll be sitting at during this reentry. So you can see the effect. Because we're kind of pitched up, some of the air slows us down and some of it bounces off and down, which as a result gives us a little bit of an upward acceleration, therefore slowing down this vertical speed drop. Whereas if I was just in regular ballistic reentry, so I didn't have descentry mode on, then this number would be decreasing much slower, kind of as a proportional, as a portion of kind of the overall vector, the surface vector. Whereas here we might actually do a little bit of a bounce. Like this might actually end up going positive briefly while we come down. But which is nice, has some nice effects, is useful to manipulate. Oh yeah, we're definitely going to. So the Earth rotated a little bit on the way down here, and we're probably going to stop short of where it's predicting our path. Sorry, I keep bumping the mount of my microphone. I was just trying it in a different position where it's a little further from my mouse. Because my mouse is very resilient. It was very cheap and very resilient, and it is very loud. All right, so yeah, this might end up going up. So g-forces are already decreasing, even though we're heading down. We're dropping in speed enough that our g-forces didn't peak very high at all. It's a pretty gentle re-entry. Those would be annoying, painful, not the most enjoyable g-forces for you and I to experience, but astronauts are trained in a worst-case situation to deal with much worse than that. So we've lost plenty of our speed. Looks like things are going very nicely, so I'm just going to kind of let it roll around. So even if it kind of goes below, pointing down to the brown area, in practice that lift it's generating will actually be lift downwards. But I'm okay with that. We're really not moving that fast anymore. So even if we might even hit a bit higher g-forces on in this portion of things. Yep. So we end up hitting a higher g-force because of that kind of downward lift pulling us down. And that's okay. Oh, and we can even see the edge of Africa through the beautiful haze of the atmosphere. Now, I need to make sure I don't make a mistake I've made many times in the past of not popping the parachutes high up enough. So I'll kind of keep oriented so we can see just the edge of Africa there, because that's kind of neat. Okay, so let's pop that off first. And I don't remember if I've set real shoot. I don't know if there's a real shoot option here. I don't think so. If for it to what's it called? To arm itself. Yeah, arm parachute. So here I can arm parachute, or if I just stage it through, I don't know if that'll arm it. It looks like it did. Yeah. And so this is going to slow us down, kind of our drogue chute, slow us down a bit first before the other parachute goes. So I think we're coming down low enough we can barely see the coast of Africa now. Yeah, there are a lot of crewed firsts we will be completing with the Gemini hardware. Even just with this, we'll put 2 crew into orbit for the first time. We will be doing like 7 days or so. We can get a pretty good duration with this crew. It just can't steer itself into orbit with other things, so we can't perform, say, first docking as an example. And I think we'll do the first spacewalk as well. Whoop! I need to put out the next parachute. There we go. Do not want to crash ungracefully into the beautiful Scatterer Ocean. And it looks like it opened up all the way. I kind of prefer when the parachute opens kind of just before the water. I know that's not realistic. It just kind of saves you time. Because I'm going to kind of stick with this craft all the way down to the water so I can recover it and see if, in practice, Gregory here did get 1 star of experience like Kathy did. Kathy got 1 star, 1 full star in experience from actually achieving orbit in our Mercury capsule, if I recall correctly. So Gregory didn't get into orbit, but we'll see if this suborbital flight will be sufficient for him to get his first star worth of experience. I'm just curious. And then 60 more days of construction will actually put another Gemini into orbit. I might just have the video in orbit. I don't know, I'll have to think about how to organize that. Because pretty much the ascent will be exactly like the ascent we just did, with the exception that it will achieve orbit, and then we will do things. All right, and we have crashed successfully down, or splashed successfully down into the ocean, with the crew surviving, which is awesome, and so we will recover them. Yeah, I don't think I have any mods at the moment to just like automatically acquire science for me, but that's okay. I'm not too pressed for science right now. I'm probably not going to get any new science except near Mars, and I can probably gather that manually. It's just it's really nice to have those mods kind of early in career, so you can just when you're doing sounding rockets and your early crewed rockets, you can quickly gather science and not have to really worry about things. So recovered vessel from suborbital flight. We recovered a good bit of hardware and ready for next assignment. So we got 1 XP, but not 1 star. That's fair enough. All right, that was our first flight of Gemini, and then as soon as we can, we will build another pretty much an exact copy of that. Just in practice, the engines will have more experience, so they will be more likely to achieve a successful mission. We'll put that crew into orbit, bring them, put them out on their first spacewalks to get that first as well. And after that, we will also the Mars mission should be pretty fun, pretty interesting. Yeah, see, I just kind of used procedural fairings and such in order to encapsulate enough life support supplies for these people to achieve new firsts, and also a bit of a battery, because we don't have fuel cell technology yet. And beyond that, it is just kind of a stock standard FASA Titan II. So we will rename this craft and go about building a new one. So thanks for watching. This has been RP-0 America. I've already described what our next flights will be like. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.